Hello everyone. So today we are going to do the poem After Blenheim from your treasure trove book. Okay. Okay, so before starting the poem line by line, let us first read about the poet and poem in brief. Okay. So Robert Southey was born in the year 1774. He was a romantic poet. In 1808, he translated the Chronicle of Cid, which made him quite popular. In addition to his epic poems, Southey also wrote histories, biographies, and essays. He was made England's Poet Laureate, that means the court poet of England, in 1813, and he remained being one until his death in 1843. Okay, and After Blenheim by Robert Southey is an anti-war poem. Okay, it condemns war, and it also centers around one of the major battles of 18th century, that is Battle of Blenheim, that took place in 1704 in a village named Blenheim in Bavaria, that is south of Germany. It was fought between France and England, and in the end England had won. Okay, so now let us know the poem in brief. Okay, so we see in the poem an elderly farmer named Caspar sitting in front of his cottage watching his grandchildren. They are Wilhelmine and Peterkin playing. Okay, and while playing, one of the kids, that is Peterkin, has found something large and round, which, on being asked, his grandfather explains that it is a skull, one of many to be found nearby. Okay, and after hearing to their grandfather's reply, both Peterkin and Wilhelmine questioned their grandfather about the purpose of the war. But the grandfather, who is an old man, tells them of burned homes, civilian casualties, and rotting corpses, that means dead bodies, while repeatedly calls it a famous victory. Okay, calls the war a famous victory. Okay, when being asked by his grandchildren again about the purpose of the war, as why is it called a famous victory with so many casualties and deaths, old Caspar had no answer to that. Okay, so we see the poem depicts the common man's ignorance of the motives of war, okay, the purpose of war. His gruesome descriptions, followed by his casual sayings, create an effect of irony in the poem. So let us quickly look into the important elements of the poem, form and style. Okay, so the poem After Blenheim is written in the form ballad. What is a ballad? A ballad is a long narrative poem that tells us a story. Okay, it is a heightened narration that uses different narrative techniques like rhymes and figures of speech. The poet here has followed the rhyming scheme A B C B D D in all the stanzas except the second one. In the second stanza, the end rhyming scheme is A B C D D D. Okay, and each stanza of the poem contains 6 lines, and the meter is iambic tetrameter. Okay, so the style used by the poet is a conversation between two people of different ages here, as we have already seen it in just before when I was doing about the poem in brief. The younger age representing vigor, restlessness, and curiosity, whereas the old age, that means old Casper, depicts experience, knowledge, and passivity. Okay, so the figure of speech used in the poem is alliteration. Okay, so I hope by now you all must be knowing what is an alliteration. We have also done it in our previous video. So it is the repetition of consonant sounds in a sequence of nearby words. Okay, Sudhi uses alliteration here in the poem to promote rhythm. Okay, example as you can see it here, how and where it has been used, and what words, okay, what consonant sounds has been repeated in the stanza here. Okay, so the next literary device used by the poet is refrain. So for the students who are coming across this word for the first time, let me tell you that a refrain is a phrase, verse, or group of verses repeated at interval throughout the poem, especially at the end of each stanza. In this poem that is after Blenheim, the poet has repeated the phrase, and the phrase that has been repeated in the poem is the great victory and a famous victory. Okay, with little variations, it has been used at the end of each stanza. Old Casper continuously repeats this phrase as this is all he knows about the war. It has been used to emphasize the ignorance and complacency of a common man about the purpose of the war. And the poet here has also used this phrase in the poem to emphasize the exact opposite. Okay, that it wasn't really a great victory, as war can never be great. So, now talking about the irony of the poem after Blenheim reflects on the horrors of war and huge devastation that it caused, like thousands of casualties, burned houses, and rotting corpses. Okay, it is, however, ironical that the poem glorifies the outcome of war in the form of great victory for a nation, but at the cost of huge destruction both of life and property. Old Casper, despite being the victim of the war and being aware of the damage caused by the war, seems to have unconcerned attitude towards the purpose of the war. He seems to be more interested and aware of the victory achieved in the war, as he claims that it was a famous victory, and things like that must be. So his gruesome descriptions, followed by his casual sayings, create an effect of irony in the poem. Okay, it is ironic that it was a great war, but no one knows why. Okay, it is also ironical that the masses, that means the common people, are lured by the leaders into believing that importance of victory in the war rather than its purpose or benefits for a common man. The irony exposes to the readers the pointlessness of war.